Good evening from Mission Control Houston, and welcome back to tonight's continuing coverage of the landing of the Soyuz TMA-07M spacecraft and its crew of 3 Expedition 35 astronauts. As of right now, the crew is moved into their Soyuz craft, having shut the hatches between the craft and the International Space Station successfully back at about 2:50 p.m. Central Time. As of right now, the 3 inside, comprised of departing Expedition 35 Commander Chris Hadfield, NASA astronaut Tom Marshburn, and Roman Romanenko of the Russian Space Agency, who will be our Soyuz commander for the evening. The 3 are suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits and inside of the descent module. As of right now, they are moving towards the next major milestone for tonight's activities, the scheduled undocking from the International Space Station, currently targeted to take place at 6:08 p.m. Central Time.
Of course, you will activate
since closing the hatches between the Soyuz craft and the Rossviet module to which it is currently docked. They accomplished a series of leak checks between on either side. Before entering the craft, they were able to say a final farewell to the 3 astronauts and cosmonauts that will remain on board the International Space Station. Here you can see them beginning to egress into their docked Soyuz vehicle. All of the crew currently inside of the Rossviet module. Right here you can see NASA astronaut Dr. Tom Marshburn now moving in. The man he's moving past in the striped shirt there is Pavel Vinogradov, a Russian cosmonaut who is remaining on board and will continue his stint as commander of Expedition 36, having taken over command of the International Space Station yesterday from departing commander, Canadian Space Agency astronaut Chris Hadfield. Now giving a final goodbye there and climbing in, you can see Russian cosmonaut Roman Romanenko. He will be in the center seat of the descent module throughout the flight this evening, in charge of all the Soyuz systems throughout the flight. He is the TMA-07M commander, and you will hear him referred to as Parus, his call sign, Parus being the Russian word for sail. He is currently conversing with the flight control team in Koryov, Russia, and the Russian MCC, or Mission Control Center. Again, this taking place a little bit earlier this afternoon. That final hatch closure coming at 2:50 p.m. Central Time. Following that hatch closure, again, they conducted a series of leak checks on either side of the hatch, both in the Rossviet side with Vinogradov remaining on board the station, and Romanenko conducting those checks from the Soyuz side inside of the orbital module. There you can see the hatch being closed between the 2, the hatch on the Soyuz craft. Three astronauts loading into the Soyuz craft, departing after spending 144 days on board the International Space Station. The crew arriving in that craft after launching from the Baikonur Cosmodrome back in December. By the time they land a little bit later tonight, they'll have spent 146 days total in space. Each of these astronauts racking up a good deal of time after this long-duration expedition. Amongst them, Soyuz Commander Romanenko clocking in at 334 days after this evening, as he had previously flown on a long-duration spaceflight during Expeditions 20 and 21. Meanwhile, departing Expedition 35 Commander Chris Hadfield will be at a total of 166 days in space. Veteran of 3 space flights now, his 2 previous stints on board space shuttles during STS-74 and STS-100. And finally, Tom Marshburn will be clocking in at 162 days in space, a veteran of 2 missions now, this Expedition 34-35 and also STS-127.
You did not hear?
Again, continuing to press towards that undocking from the International Space Station. Physical separation scheduled to take place at 6:08 p.m. Central Time. This will come 3 minutes after the undocking command is processed. That command will be given at about 6:05. Following that, the series of hooks holding the Soyuz in place to the Rossviet module will begin to release. Upon that release, the physical separation will occur with the springs on either side of the docking mechanism pushing the vehicle out, giving it an initial departure rate of just about 0.1 meters per second. You can see how the events will unfold here in this animation. It'll execute that undocking maneuver before eventually moving into a separation burn. That separation burn occurring just about 3 minutes after undocking, 15-second burn of the Soyuz engine, setting it up for the eventual deorbit burn, which will take place after it's about 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station. Next, the vehicle will undergo module separation with the instrumentation and propulsion and also the orbital modules breaking away, leaving the descent module to pass through the Earth's upper atmosphere. The ablative heat shield will dissipate most of the heat of re-entry, protecting the crew throughout. That heat shield will jettison shortly before the parachutes open up. The series of parachutes will open, including the drogue chutes and the main chutes, in order to slow the vehicle down to an eventual descent rate of only 7.2 meters per second. The main parachute covering an area of over 1,000 square meters, again slowing the vehicle for the most part until the soft landing engines will fire just before touchdown to remove any of the excess Gs that these astronauts would otherwise be subject to. But again, on board, the crew reporting throughout over the last few hours as they conducted a series of leak checks, not only on that hatch between the vehicle and the station, but also the hatch between the orbital and the descent module into which they are now seated. All three astronauts reported suited up, leak checks being done on their Sokol launch and entry suits. Again, the configuration today, Roman Romanenko will be in the center seat as Soyuz commander. Meanwhile, Chris Hadfield will be on the left seat serving as the board engineer, and then Tom Marshburn over on the right.
After the undocking, 0252-54 is the sunset, and sunrise 0329.
0254 до 0329.
Okay, from 0254 until 0329. And then the next sunset will be before the thruster activation, 0427. But you will remind us about it later. Yes, that's right.
Just a few minutes before we went on the air, mission controllers here in Houston reporting that the International Space Station has been maneuvered to its undocking attitude. They'll be working in order to support their colleagues over in the Russian Mission Control Center in Koryov, who will be taking the controls throughout much of this Soyuz descent and landing. While the teams in both mission control centers and the astronauts on board continue to prepare, the search and recovery forces, which will be responsible for recovering the crew from the landing site, have begun their final travel to the landing zones. You can see the number of vehicles that will be involved here, among them 3 fixed-wing aircraft, one serving as the control center in the air for these landing and recovery forces and relaying communications from the Mission Control Center in Koryov to the Soyuz craft once it's in range. Also among those will be 12 Mi-8 helicopters. Of those, 8 have already previously deployed much earlier this morning, Central Time Houston, to the forward staging point of Jezkazgan. As of, well, actually at about 6 p.m. Central Time, they'll be departing for the Jezkazgan airport in order to deploy in 2 separate teams. 4 of those aircraft heading towards the prime landing site. They will be the prime landing team and consist of vital personnel such as flight surgeons and doctors, and also the RSC Energia personnel in charge of maintaining the vehicle and safety net for the rest of the teams. 4 other helicopters will be departing for an area halfway between the prime landing site, which you can see there circled, and the ballistic landing zone, which is just a little bit earlier on that orbital path. They'll be there just in case the Soyuz takes a ballistic landing and comes in at a slightly steeper angle. You can see the ballistic landing region here. Once
so you do it from the
either a successful on-target landing is made or a ballistic landing is made, those 4 helicopters will then either head to the ballistic zone or head back to the Jezkazgan airport. And then just about 20 minutes ago, the remaining prime landing helicopters, 4 of which staging out of Karaganda, headed towards the airport. Also in the crew, you can see those ATV all-terrain vehicles, 6 of which will be making their way out to the prime zone.
825, the pressure in ESA, and 635 in...
Crew continuing to call out performance calls. You will hear Soyuz Commander Roman Romanenko throughout the descent today. Just about a little under 10 minutes away from the initial undocking command, with scheduled physical separation or undocking from the International Space Station, still targeted on time at 6:08 p.m. Central Time.
They're waiting for you and expecting you back. That's good.
Again, Russian cosmonaut here, Roman Romanenko, in command of the Soyuz TMA-07M spacecraft throughout tonight's activities. Once the crew gives the command to undock at 6:05 p.m. Central Time, it'll initiate an opening of the hooks currently holding the craft to Rosviet on the docking module on the Earth-facing side of the Zarya module in the Russian segment.
Left.
It'll take roughly 3 minutes for these hooks to open, following which springs on both sides of the docking interface will push out and separate the craft from the International Space Station. It'll depart at an initial opening rate of just about 1/10 of a meter per second, and following this slow back away about 3 minutes more, it'll execute a separation burn, or a 15-second firing of 2 of the engines on the Soyuz craft in order to increase that opening rate to about 0.5 meters per second.
It's better than radiator.
This will enable the Soyuz craft to reach a distance of about 12 kilometers, or just under 7.5 miles away from the International Space Station, setting it up for its eventual deorbit burn.
Я вижу арм и трассу.
I can see arm and the truss as well. So the air composition is not lit. Okay, copy.
Сам ты проверяешь, Симани РРП будет? Да. Я проверяю.
Are you checking RRP? I'll be checking this 1, 2, 3 accelerometer and caudal repress. And I need to monitor that the pressure is not dropping. Very good, Percy. This is Mission Control Moscow. After you send us descend R8, and after that, send R5 twice.
Принято, скажете.
Copy.
Хорошо.
We'll let you know as we go. Copy?
Спасибо. Будем готовы.
Thank you. We'll be ready.
Итак, ожидаем доклада о начале хода динамики.
Speaking simultaneously.
Хорошо, выдаем с пульта.
Okay, we send in the command from the control panel. Copy.
20 секунд.
20 seconds.
10.
10.
5.
5.
Есть. Выдали и 2. Yes.
Command has been sent. Гадео repress confirmed.
Ждем Бадуси.
Standing by for Bdus.
Бадуси, yes, все трое.
All three Bdus are on.
Я на ИП.
I'm on TV. I'm on enter. Okay, turn off as web TV.
Шабалон стабильный.
Bottle stable. Navigate into rendezvous format and send in the command. I'll copy. It's Roman 5 command, right? R6. R8. Send in R8. Done. Next is R5 twice. R5 twice. 1, 2. It's done. After the second hit, nothing changed. They were changed after the first one. Copy. I have visual of the target. Is it okay? I confirm the bars. Everything's fine?
Разворот видишь?
Unintelligible.
Хорошо, спасибо.
I'm turned it on. Okay, now I can see.
Гесо нет.
Guess so. Yes, I confirm green light. A maneuver indicator. Capture.
Гесо.
So, no, not yet on the format. Page 95.
Да.
TV. To rendezvous. You agree? Yes. No need to turn it on. You will not need it.
Принято.
Copy.
Хорошо, ожидаем.
Okay, we're standing by.
Фару не включаем. Ближний свет.
We will not be turning on the floodlight. No near lights required. How about R7? Do not send R7. Moscow, we actually... Okay, no R7.
So right now, Soyuz Commander Roman Romanenko doing a visual inspection of the docking mechanism in advance of giving that undocking command, still targeted at 6:05 p.m. Central Time, which will lead to a physical separation of the Soyuz craft from the International Space Station at 6:08 p.m. Meanwhile, on the ground, the prime and ballistic landing site team members are headed to the Zhezkazgan airport to board their helicopters and then move out to their respective positions for tonight's landing. Meanwhile, the spaceflight meteorology group here in Houston reporting weather quite nice right now in Kazakhstan. A few clouds at 12,000 and 25,000 feet with some variable and light winds, but expected temperature at the time of landing was only 59 degrees Fahrenheit, so quite pleasant for their touchdown in Kazakhstan.
Kind of blurry. On VKO, that's a TV display. VSK normal. I have visual of portion of the station. Why don't we have gas on? Oh, it's already gone, but it was there. Okay, great, thank you.
Инструкция там внизу. Хорошо, все.
Okay, I understand about the instruction. 204. 20 seconds, I'm ready. For D7. I'm ready. 5 seconds. Okay. Go ahead, start.
So as of right now, the International Space Station and the Soyuz craft just about to make their pass over Russian ground stations. You can see there the large yellow circles there on the ground track map. Now getting telemetry from the vehicle itself. Should hopefully be getting some television footage from on board the craft momentarily.
Okay, here we go. D15 for on dock. Okay, we are arming D15. And then gas 17. Okay, copy. D17. At 205? Affirmative. Roman, it's very hard for me to copy you. Copy? Do you copy me now? Yes. Okay, say it again. At 205, send the command. I am ready. The ground gave us a go. D17, D17. Okay.
This video from the docking camera.
Hooks closed. Electrical connected. LEDs are no longer lit. Transfer hatch closed. Depot M2 confirmed. Schedule press confirmed. Page 96 now. Okay, copy. Next time, 2 hours, 9
And so, command issued to undock the craft again, this being given at 6:05 p.m. Central Time. It'll take about 3 minutes for the series of hooks holding the Soyuz craft in place to release.
Believe that we'll lose unintelligible slightly earlier than at 4:40, yes. The timer is on. Okay, I'm navigating away from here. Okay, I'm monitoring the timer. Okay, I can see your book in the window. When capture indicator will go off, we'll need to confirm SSVP mode off. Yes. The timer will turn itself on. We'll need to turn it off and confirm the execution of the mode. Roman, when the back off starts, monitor for foreign objects on the docking port. Will do. Okay, I will be monitoring. I'm ready. Too much noise. Where does it come from? From VHF. Well, we need some noise suppressors.
Continuing to get some camera views and telemetry from on board the Soyuz craft as it's making its pass over these Russian ground sites less than a minute now from scheduled undock and physical separation.
Okay, I'm deactivating.
Я готов. Да. Как нас вышло? Слава Богу.
Great. Okay, no gas off. Capture is still on. Standing by for physical separation in 35 seconds. Okay.
Лучше. Вот сейчас хорошо слышно.
Well, now I can copy you loud and clear. Approximate. In a minute, I will select depot. Okay, separation confirmed. Timer is on.
And separation confirmed at 6:08 p.m. Central Time while the station and Soyuz craft fly about 257 statute miles over eastern Mongolia.
Well, good luck. I'm looking at GSO1 to confirm, combine confirm. I can have a visual of the target. We're backing off. Well, so far it's peace and quiet. In 20 seconds. I'll be ready for A9. Stand by. That would be an auto. Oh, okay. Okay, that would be an auto. Yes, I can see it. Say it again. Yes, depot selection will be done in auto. Okay. But
again, physical separation from the International Space Station confirmed. The station was at an altitude of 255 statute miles over eastern Mongolia.
Do that.
Backing away at a rate of just a little over 1/10 of a meter per second.
R7. Okay. Depot B1 confirmed.
Выдаем R7.
Send in S7.
R7.
Roman 7. Send in.
Наблюдаем ушли от стыковочного узла.
We're monitoring, looking at the docking port. While at this distance, we can hardly notice any foreign objects if there were any, but so far we confirm that it's clear. Okay. Flying farther and further. Yes, Roman. Everything's great. Are we flying indeed? Well, so far, so good. Well, guys, best of luck. Okay, guys, bye.
Хорошо.
Depot will be firing for 15 seconds. Copy. Roman, soft landing to you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Next in the timeline, the Soyuz craft will be executing a 15-second burn of 2 of its engines, enabling it to further separate away from the International Space Station.
Depot firing for backup. Okay, so confirmed, everything is nominal and we're standing by.
Делаем операцию по конфигурации связи после расстыковки для того, чтобы у нас появилось на борту СБ-1. Есть вращение двигателя.
Okay, depot firing. We confirm acceleration. I can.
And separation burn confirmed.
Don't worry, we'll accelerate it. You mean that the entire...
This will be a 15-second firing of the Soyuz engines, accelerating it to a little over half a meter per second separation from the International Space Station.
Thank you so much for all your work and for your cooperation.
Confirming that the burn has been completed.
Okay, the burn is complete. Backup burn. We'll be sending order via command radio link, and then we'll be recording the descent set points. Okay, we're monitoring. Stop. At 12.
Again, separation burn confirmed.
Okay.
And that 15-second burn of the Soyuz engines taking place at 6:11 p.m. Central Time. Is now enabling the craft to continue to separate itself away from the International Space Station, eventually opening up to a distance of 12 kilometers or just under 7.5 miles, setting up the staging for the eventual deorbit and landing burn.
What about the photos? Did you make a few good ones? I can see the Earth.
Да, да. Ром, отлично, отлично получились, только солнце светит прямо в глаз. Я понял. Не в ту сторону отваливай. Все замечательно.
Okay. Close out ops per page 90 inaudible will be done on your go. Copy.
Сейчас будет обратно доворачивать.
97.
По-моему, Ром, все стабильно. Это хорошо.
Okay.
Красавица станция. Да, отпустила нас своими батареями.
Okay.
Как бы руки к нам протянула.
We can see the entire ISS and the solar rays like the arms stretched out to embrace us for the final goodbye.
Том, тебе видно?
Tom, can you see? Yes.
Это как может быть реальность?
It seems unreal.
Unreal. Итак,
Okay.
по заключительным операциям по команде Земли будем выдавать
On
команды. Я передаю.
MCC go, we'll start doing the closeout ops.
Я только готов, едем. Да.
I'm ready.
So the Soyuz continuing to open up the gap of distance between it and the International Space Station. That undocking again coming successfully at 6:08 p.m. Central Time, while the station was flying just about 255 statute miles over eastern Mongolia. Separation burn was completed successfully, firing 2 of the Soyuz engines just 3 minutes later at 6:11. The Soyuz will continue to open the gap between itself and the International Space Station over the next few hours, eventually getting to a distance of about 12 kilometers away, or just under 7.5 miles.
33, да.
0333, right? Right.
Сказал.
Your next compass will start dynamic mode and build in the attitude for the maneuver. From GoPro cameras will be activated at 0330 as agreed. Okay, copy 0330. 5 minutes prior to accelerometer activation via command radio link and 8 minutes prior to air. Copy. Or there. So far, we're on page 97, standing by. Affirmative. We confirm separation. We continue to back off. We can barely see the docking port, but we can still observe the station. 3 more minutes. First, you are going to proceed with the closeout ops on page 97. And then, please will be written down the descent sequence. We copy and the closeout ops doesn't work. The mode.
Soyuz Commander Roman Romanenko continuing to give status calls following that successful undocking to the teams in Koryov, Russia. You can see their mission control center here. Meanwhile, the landing teams in both Zhezkazgan and Karaganda getting into their helicopters and beginning to head towards the landing zones.
Okay. RRP program LED is lit, that's okay. Are you guys loading the set points? It's actually done and RRP program is already in. Okay, copy. I'm getting ready for E1. E1 sent, G4. Okay, you go for G4. Did you send it? G4 confirmed. Now send in D8, deactivating SSVP. D8. SSVP off. OFF. Floodlight is also off. Writing down the parameter, the parameters. Bottle 1, 169er. Bottle 2, 175.4. Prop, unintelligible. Go into page 102. Next time, 0330. Affirmative. Now we're taking a break.
Ревербератор.
Can you see here the reverberator?
Ecco, да. Признак спуска введен. Это хорошо.
Descent signature is loaded.
Wow. What's that?
Breaking up.
Будильник.
Alarm?
Согласен. Хорошая идея.
325 maybe?
325, да.
Affirmative, 325.
So again, the Soyuz TMA-07M successfully undocking from the Rossviet module and the International Space Station. That undocking coming at 6:08 p.m. Central Time, while the station was 255 statute miles over eastern Mongolia. Meanwhile, on board, the crew of 3, Roman Romanenko, Chris Hadfield, and Tom Marshburn, continuing to give down status calls, everything functioning as expected. Remaining on board the International Space Station, the crew of Expedition 36 now officially started following the departure of that Soyuz craft. Leading them will be Russian cosmonaut Pavel Vinogradov there in the center. Will be joined by NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Mazurkin for the remainder of their time on board the station, currently scheduled to come home a little bit later in mid-September. But following that undocking, the separation burn coming on time at 6:11 p.m. Central Time. The Soyuz engines firing for about 15 seconds in order to increase the separation rate from the slow crawl of only a tenth of a meter per second to over half a meter per second. This will enable the Soyuz to open a gap to a distance of about 12 kilometers or 7.5 miles away from the International Space Station before eventually setting it up for deorbit and entry through the Earth's atmosphere. You can see a rough timeline of all of those events that will be taking place. It'll do that initial impulse or deorbit burn, following that module separation, where the orbital module on top and the propulsion and instrumentation modules will detach from the descent module, which will then continue its path through the Earth's atmosphere, the heat shield protecting it, the crew inside from the effects of atmospheric re-entry. Following that controlled descent, the parachutes will eventually deploy, slowing the Soyuz craft down to a much slower rate of only about 7.2 meters per second. Meanwhile, the major events coming up for you next will be our landing coverage, our final broadcast for this evening, which will begin at 8:15 p.m. Central Time here on NASA TV. The deorbit burn scheduled to take place at 8:37, the final touchdown and landing in Kazakhstan at 9:30 p.m. Right now, the landing and recovery forces are mobilizing and heading out to their helicopters at the airports in Zhezkazgan and Karaganda. The prime team coming from Zhezkazgan and consisting of all of the necessary personnel such as flight nurses and crew surgeons, and also the RSC Energia personnel who will be in charge of safing the vehicle and also erecting the medical tent for the crew. They'll be joined in the air by 3 fixed-wing aircrafts, one of which will be acting as the command and control center for all of the landing operations, relaying communications from the crew on board the Soyuz craft back down to the mission control center in Koryov, and also teams on the ground. So again, all those teams mobilizing and heading out. They'll be departing momentarily as they all 12 aircraft, 8 coming from Zhezkazgan and 4 from Karaganda, will meet up at the landing site and form a racetrack fashion around which they'll fly and wait for the Soyuz to pass through the Earth's atmosphere and eventually touch down, then landing and extracting the crew. All of that again scheduled to take place a little bit later this evening at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. But with that, we will go ahead and end our broadcast for undocking, successful undocking.
Keep it depressed. Keep it depressed. We want to hear your voices. Okay.
Надо привести в порядок, пока светло.
We need to straighten all the cables out while we are in installation. We don't want them to be loose.
Здесь в рощи месте забей. Здесь не очень. Да, не очень.
Well, not a good location.
Right now we're getting some live views from the station external cameras as we just got back into range of the teeter satellites responsible for relaying data and video communications back down to the teams here in Houston. Swinging the cameras around real quick to see if we can get some views of that departure of the Soyuz craft.
That's a good way to do it. And we'll also need to stow away the pencil.
Знаешь что? Может быть, ручной?
Maybe we should do it manually. Manually, do what? You see the pencil on the right.
After the successful separation burn, the Soyuz is departing the International Space Station a little bit over a meter per second.
Because when we'll start experiencing G-loads, the flash...
Rather, a little over half a meter per second.
Go ahead and... wrap it up one more time. Wrap it around it. Okay.
Our chair and the wall. Everywhere around the должен быть his helmet also.
Understood?
Должен быть свободно. Да.
No, this one has to be free, okay? And then, after the separation, we'll start experiencing more deloads and we'll tighten our straps and it will help us. But I'm sure you know that. We didn't do it. Well, you see, we only descended in the shuttle. Don't you do that in the shuttle? No, it's slightly different. Okay. Pacific. Are you sure? Well, I suspect so.
San Diego.
San Diego. Have you been there? Nope. It's a beautiful place. I'm sure. Is it a Wild West? Well, this is athletics center. Great weather, very stable. Actually, the Pacific ensures very stable weather. Can you see the mountains from there? No. What about San Francisco? Is it? I'm talking about the mountains. Mountains are far away. If you need good mountains, go to Vancouver or Seattle or Portland.
Vancouver.
Vancouver would be my preference, okay? Okay, then I think I'll go to Napoli. Or maybe Denver. I don't believe you have real mountains in Denver.
Miami.
Well, the place where you don't have any mountains would be Miami.
Cuba,
Well, finally, Houston.
We can draw it.
Not too many mountains there, that's for sure.
Draw it in the computer. Мы летаем сегодня.
Today, we are flying. What about the program 5 time?
Нет. Так я думаю, точно.
I don't have it.
Они нам должны сказать.
Well,
свежие данные.
The ground is supposed to give us fresh data.
3:30.
By 3:30.
Но время будет, потому что
We'll have time.
двигатель это когда?
Because the
Час.
First of fire and 4:37, so we still have 1 hour.
Всем информацию.
We'll have 24 minutes, so that's plenty. Okay.
Ориентация изменяется.
Inaudible.
Теперь это мы входим в TMA, да?
And that's when we go to the sunset, right? Yes.
I'm dreaming about waterfall. Да. Like a shower. Shower, like a waterfall. Ну, когда мы знаем Дани, программу 5 я могу написать тоже. Хорошо.
Then I will record this as well.
So the 3 crew members on board Soyuz TMA-07M continuing to separate away from the International Space Station, moving towards that eventual point of 12 kilometers or 7.5 miles away. Commander Roman Romanenko on board the Soyuz of the Russian Space Agency, Tom Marshburn, a NASA astronaut, and Chris Hadfield, departing Expedition 35 Commander, all reporting in good condition. Systems on board the Soyuz continuing to function as expected, moving towards that expected landing time of 9:30 p.m. Central.
You know everything in advance, right?
Here's a quick rundown of all the major events coming up. Our next broadcast will commence at 8:15 p.m. Central Time. That deorbit burn scheduled at 8:37, setting up for the eventual landing in Kazakhstan at 9:30 p.m. The crew will be seeing some nice weather on the ground as all of the search and recovery forces are headed to the airports and on their way for the landing site. They'll be staging out of Zhezkazgan and Karaganda, the prime landing crews departing from Zhezkazgan just about 30 minutes ago, so all headed in that direction. The crew looking good for a scheduled on-time landing. And with that, we'll be wrapping up our broadcast and coverage of tonight's undocking. Be sure to come back with us a little bit later, where hopefully we'll have some views of that Soyuz craft as it departed from the International Space Station, and we'll be bringing you coverage through that deorbit burn all the way through touchdown in the steppes of Kazakhstan. But for now, we will go ahead and sign off and be back in just a few hours. This is Mission Control Houston.